of these legends are, in fact, you can easily see, they are going to be astronomical. Now, in this talk, I will not obviously be able to cover all the details, but I am taking two of them, one of them in a very minor fashion, one in a little bit detail. The first one, okay, I will tell you. Thank you so much. This is the legend of gods drinking Somapana. The Somapana is a very well-known thing. It's a folkloric, actually thing, you know, that the gods would drink something that would intoxicate them. And the Somayaga also is said that people would drink and all that. Now, what is that legend about? And that is connected with a number called 3339 in the Rig Veda. It's very peculiar. This has attracted me for a long time, and some investigation on this I am going to present. And the second one is the legend of Dhruva. In fact, my previous speaker spoke about Dhruva, but we have actually forgotten the original Vedic Dhruva. That is what I want to say. The word Dhruva is used in various senses, but what was this original nakshatra? The astronomers later period did not use the original Dhruva, but the religious people knew very well. Shankaracharya and the other acharyas knew the original Dhruva. They referred to the original Dhruva. So what was this original Dhruva and why the Puranas talk about it, and why even the Vedas talk about this Dhruva is one of the things. There is again an astronomical information. There are several others I will not be able to cover this. Now, the Puranas that I am considering apart from this, essentially the Brahmanda Purana. Vishnu Purana also gives some of these principles behind the Somapana, the drinking of Soma by the gods. They also describe Dhruva. Now, I am trying to see that the mathematics people would say later on, I will come to that, starting from counting, starting from observation. So, I am trying to trace two kinds of tradition of mathematics in India. One is the observation tradition, which later on led to astronomy, the Siddhantic period, and what we may call the mundane mathematics. The other one is the listening tradition or the hearing tradition of the Vedas, which led to music. There is also considerable esoteric mathematics and music. I will touch upon that in time permits. Now, Puranas, as you know, they are a later period as texts. They have the Gupta period information is also there, but they also contain information which is valid only for something like 1500 BC also. And this kind of what we may say a mixer is actually a chronological signature. If somebody is interested in the chronology of the ancient things, he can get some footprints. It may not be exact, but approximately something can definitely be done. Now, what is this Soma business I am trying to show here? This is actually a mantra from Rig Veda. This is the 10th mandala. This is what is called the Vivaha Sukta. It's very famous. The celestial marriage between Soma and Surya. Actually, according to me, it is an eclipse statement, but I will not go into that model of the eclipse here which is described. But the translation I have given here, it says Soma. There are some very interesting philosophical things which actually would have led to later models of the Meru and the planetary models connected with the Meru is also here. But anyway, I am concerned with the Soma right now. Soma, the moon is stationed near the nakshatra, but actually here it is translated as moon as Soma. But Soma is also an extra principle, and moon may be the regent deity of Soma. All these kinds of metaphors are there. Later on, I would say the Vedic tradition, the commentators take in some places Soma as moon, the visible moon also. Now, also says people would think that the herb is Soma and that is drunk, but only the seers know the real nature of the deity of Soma, that is the moon. And Soma is protected, etc. Soma, whereas gods bring you, you become bright again. This is actually a reference to the moon. Also to Soma in a esoteric sense, but also to the moon. This moon is also the maker of the years. So there is already a, that is the Samana Masa Akriti. There is a famous statement where the lunar year was supposed to have been counted with the help of moon. If you see the Yaska's description of this, he would say that Somam manyate papivan yat sarpishyam oshadim. Somam va brahman vidu na tasya ashnati kaschana. Nobody eats Soma. I am not going to the details because I have to go to the Sayana's translation, but I have given the rough translation here. Rough translation. Now, Soma in the Adidaiva tradition, that is, a Vyaska gives three kinds of descriptions for at least some of the Rigvedic mantras, but not all. Adiyajna, Adidaiva and Adhyatma. Now, the Adiyajna is very well maintained in the Brahmanas and the later Vedic text, and Sayana essentially covers the Adiyajna interpretation. But the Adhyatma is contained in the Upanishads, and of course the Vedanta and those things have grown out of the Adhyatma. But what about Adidaiva? Adidaiva is essentially in the Puranas, but it is mixed up with too many legends. And Adidaiva in the original thing is actually celestial. So celestial means sky observations, sky pictures, and if you want some ancient astronomical information, you can capture only in the Adidaiva. Fortunately, there is a little bit left still. And Yaska clearly says, because we have all passed through the gate of Yaska to understand Veda, there is no other way. Whether we like it or not, whatever we are practicing, whatever we are preaching, is only through the Yaska's interpretation, because no other interpretation before that is actually known. The later people have also used Yaska very essentially. And he very clearly says that they have to interpret in many places Soma as moon only. Even though there are other kinds of, three other interpretations are also available. Now, how is the Soma connected with the number? That's again Rigveda, 10th mandala, 52nd mantra. Here it comes, Trini Shata, Tri Sahasrani, Trimshacha Deva. That is, the count of the Vishvedevas is given as a very special number, 3339. Now, why this special number? It could have been 3000 or 3040, it could have been some other number, but this is very essentially given very precisely like this. Now, this number comes up in several other places. In the Kila Suttas, Shukla Yajurveda, Taittiriya Brahmana, they all use this number. But slowly it has been forgotten. There is also in one Upanishad, it is given as 3336, it is given. The 3 is missing. We will come to that, maybe it is only a transmission loss, otherwise this number is also same as this number. Now, what is the meaning of this? This I have discussed and published, I will not go into the details. This is actually moon turning red in color. That is also mentioned in the next month, the next sutta. The moon turns red in color, it has to be a total lunar eclipse. This number is connected with the lunar eclipse. And this is an invitation for the Vishvedevas to bring the Agni, and the Agni who has a period, a life of this many numbers. Even though it is not very specifically said, all those words are available in that. So if we believe in a linguistic correlation, not necessarily a number correlation as we do in modern regression analysis, we can very clearly see there should be some connection. But fortunately for us, this number is preserved very well in the Brahmana. That is the only Purana which gives it correctly, whereas the other Puranas distort that number, even though all the shlokas are same in the Puranas. So the Puranas had an ancient astronomy, and this ancient astronomy is preserved in the Brahmana Purana pretty well, and it says, the shloka is here, Trayascha Trimshatascha Trayas Trimshash Tataivacha. I will not read it. What it means is 303, then 303, 33, 3003, making up this, they come and drink moon. When they come and drink the moon, that is also given. They come on a Purnima day first, and they keep on drinking each day one kala. That is only in the Krishna Paksha they drink. It is a, we may call a euphemism or a metaphor for the phases of the moon decreasing, that's all. That is what they said the gods are going to drink. So if they do this only in the Krishna Paksha, what happens in the Shukla Paksha? It has to increase, they can't drink, nobody can drink, because it's increasing. So what happens with this number? This is a ritualistic correlation anyway. I will not go into those details because Vishvedevas are important, extremely important, as Pitar Devas, in the Pitar Karmas, in the Dashapurnamas, Yagas, in a variety of places. That is another aspect. But if you consider the number aspect, because the mathematics in India has started from counting. In Rigveda you can see counting of the manuts, in some places as 49, as 21, in 108, and a variety of countings, particularly this number which is a long count. We were talking about eclipses and their connection with other kinds of astronomical models. In fact, this number is connected with the Vedanta Jyotisha model also. I have no time to go into that. And you can clearly see, so elementary, if you consider both the Paksha, Shukla Paksha and the Krishna Paksha, it is 6,678 Tithis, and that is going to be equal to 223 synodic months. And the Vedic months, we know that were lunar, but the year was solar. Even Vedanta Jyotisha takes it as 372 Tithis per year. That is going to be equal to 18 years. And 18 years is supposed to be the Saros cycle, the Saros period known to the Chaldeans, that is what it says, but it is already in the Rig Veda, and this number has continued to this day in various forms, and I believe that this was the origin of the Vedanta Jyotisha also, because there, if you take 223 synodic months and 18 years, and you consider the first 5 convergence as a continuous fraction, you get 62 by 5, and that they took the nearest fraction of that and have worked out their 5-year cycle on that. Okay, that is one aspect. I will leave this number here and go to my second legend. That is the Meru. Meru, in fact, my previous speaker was also mentioning, Meru is continuing to this day in various forms, although the star which was at the end of the Meru is forgotten, the original star. The Meru comes in the Vedic tradition also, particularly in the Taittiriya Aranyaka, where a star called Kashyapa is not supposed to leave Meru. Meru Najihati Kashyapa, it comes. Now that Kashyapa is part and parcel of a constellation called Shishumara. That is what we call in the modern times as Draco. That is my second information that I want to present. So later astronomy takes Dhruva as a mathematical pole point on the globe. And they also talk of 2 Dhruvas. Even in Bharat Samhita, we see in the Saptarshi-chara, he says there is a Dhruvanayaka and around that Saptarshis move. But in the explanation, Utpala says there are 2 Dhruvas. He quotes Brahmagupta and says there are 2 Dhruvas in Dvivachana uses because he wanted the South Pole and the North Pole. It is not a star. So their Dhruvas, they had some confusion whether they have to identify with a star or not. Maybe they knew, but they were realistic to their tradition because there is no observable star at the North celestial pole after this in the common era, in the beginning of the common era. So the present Dhruva came to the North celestial pole only around 1500 AD, to the precise position. There was no pole star which normal people could have observed. In fact, we have the Dhruva Matsya Yantra, which came up only around 1500 AD by Padmanabha. He talks about the Dhruva and the fish, the Matsya, not the Shishumara. So the Shishumara and the Matsya are different. And who is this? Shishumara has been an interesting thing. In fact, this is what I was saying. The original Dhruva of the Vedas and Puranas has been forgotten. But I will first show the Puranic Dhruva and then I will go to the Vedic. This is again from the Brahmanda Purana. So the Brahmanda Purana clearly describes, there are at least about 5 chapters devoted to Dhruva and the celestial models of those days. And in fact, I heard that here people study the Sanskrit text in IIT Kanpur. I appeal that this text should be studied. It is a very simple language and it has an ancient ancient observational model for including the planets. And what it says about the Dhruva is this. Dhruva is actually, he says, is rotating in the same place where his Dhruva is rotating, and he is also turning all the grahas around it, that is all the planets, and even the sun and moon are being rotated by this Dhruva himself. And since Dhruva is rotating, it is connected with invisible strings to the sun and the moon and the planets, and through these invisible strings they are all rotating in circular orbits, is what it says. And it describes also Uttana Pada Putroso Medi Bhuto Dhruvo Divi. You can easily understand this. The son of Uttana Pada, the Dhruva, he has become the Medi, means is a pole or a pivot in the sky, and he is rotating every other object around him. Now, there are 2 models given for this. I will show the models later. There is one model here, that is the Taila Pida Yata Chakram Brahmanto Brahmin. So, the Taila Pida, let me show you figure. Yeah, this is the figure. This is the Thailapida chakra, which you would have seen the Gani. He says that this is the Medi, this is Dhruva. He also rotates. It also rotates all other things around him, like the bullets rotate. And this is the invisible string in the sky, with which it helps to rotate the other bodies. This is one model. The second model is the quarter wheel model for Dhruva, where it says, like the central part of the quarter wheel, it stays there and spins, but it doesn't itself move. Dhruva is also moving like that. So this is the explanation. It's a physical model given, and yeah, this I am going to cover. He says, where is this Dhruva located? This is another interesting thing. If you simply imaginary thing, you may ignore it, but it describes Dhruva in terms of 14 other stars. And Dhruva is positioned at the tail of this Shishumara, which looks like a whale. That is what is described in these shlokas. And also the last one, Puche Agnischa Mahendrascha Marichaha Kashyapo Dhruva. That is in the tail. These are the 4 stars which are there. The end is Dhruva. Tarakaha Shishumarase Nastam Yati Chatushtayam. These 4 stars, they never said they are circumpolar. You know that the Draco has 14, I will show the figure also. Some of them, the front part, they were setting and rising even in the most ancient period. But these 4 were always circumpolar. So you can locate the period when these things have happened. So the names of the 14 stars in the Shishumara constellation and the body parts making up the animal figure is given, so that people know it. And also here there is a statement that who knows the body parts correctly and who knows the 14 stars, his life will be extended by 14 years is what is given. This is commented by Al-Baruni. I will come to that. Now the translation is what I had given. I think easily skip this. Shishumara means either a whale or a dolphin, or in fact some of the Indus Valley people say it should be translated as a gharial. This Kenoyer who said that it should be translated as a gharial, but I don't know. Yeah, well, anyway, we take one of those special animals. And I have already shown this. And the Brahmanda Purana is the first Purana I could locate for this Vataraju and the Pravaha and all that. The Pravaha comes up in the Siddhantic Astronomy also, but in the Puranas is already there. And the concept of Vatarashana, not Vataraju, the word, is in the Rigveda. In the Rigveda itself, the Vatarashana comes up in the Keshi Sukta and the 10th Mandala. And the Keshis, they are moving, they are the Muni special. According to me, they are actually comets or meteorites, which are moving without any connection. That means with the Vatarashana, they will be able to move what it is said. This is what is later used in the Siddhantic Astronomy. And you can see in this concept, in this model, the concept of obliquity is also there. There is a wave picture. They don't say it is 23 degrees or 24 degrees, but there is something vertical, but you can have a motion incline. And in fact, Brahmanda Purana, if you read, there are 2 kinds of things. There is a motion at a distance is described, and he wants that the later part of the Purana, they wanted the motion of the sun, the north to the south also described. It is not only the east to west, but north to south. How do you describe it? So it is a mechanical model again says there are 2 layer strings, not one. In one place it is given as 1 string, whereas it is a 2 string. With 1 string it pulls to the north, with the other string it releases so that it can go to the south. So the solstice is very important. So this is the model which was imagined in the Puranic period. Now, where is the connection for this to the Veda? Because I believe all of you go up to the Vedas. There is this mantra in the Krishna Yajurveda, in the book called the Ekagni Kanda. Ekagni Kanda is used, generally many of the rituals that we practice are also the mantras I said. This is the mantra which the groom has to tell the bride after the marriage during the Griha Pravesha, that is entering the house, before entering the house, to show this in the night that you be fixed in my house like Dhruva is fixed in the north. So Dhruva Kshitihi, Dhruva Yonihi, this is what he has to say. And the lady has to repeat the mantra in some of the Griha Sutras. In some of the Kashmirian Griha Sutra it says she has to see 4 stars. Whereas in some of these, in the South Indian version there is only 1 star which is mentioned. I will not go into those details. This Dhruva is described by the commentators as that star which is fixed, and you can see this was definitely a star because Nakshatrana Metyasi. This Dhruva is the Metyi for the nakshatra, the pivot for the nakshatra. So the commentator says this is like a fixed pivot around which the animals move. So they were giving the models which were known to them in their period, and that is precisely what science is about. You keep on describing what you see in the nature in terms of models known to you and try to develop better models or better explanation, maybe the mathematical models, because that language had not yet developed at that time. Now, the word Dhruva, as I said, is pointed out as true, certain, unchanging. The word comes even in the Rig Veda, but not as a star, but as something which is fixed. Even the earth is fixed, according to them. So, earth was called Dhruva in fact. But the words used in the later text, particularly the Yajurvedic text, the Stanu, Medi, Nabi, they all qualify as something which is central, which is something as fixed. Puranas mention the daily circular motion of Dhruva is observable. Brahmanda Purana says it's a great mystery that you can observe. This doesn't set, but it keeps on rotating in the same place. Hence, during the Purana period, because they could see it rotating, this circular motion should have happened. That means the Dhruva should have shifted. It was fixed, shifted by a few degrees is my speculation. So this apparent contradiction between the Vedic text and the Puranic text gives us some kind of a chronological footprint. And if you go to the Vedic text, so which Vedic text gives this as Dhruva really? That is in the Taittiriya Aranyaka, which is older than the Ekagnikanda. Ekagnikanda is a ritualistic text, whereas the Aranyakas are supposed to be older than this, at least that is a broad guess that is done. And this is a very popular text even to this day, it's very important. Aranyakas are supposed to be kind of esoteric and secret text to be studied in the forest. And you see the mantra is here. Shiro Dharmo Murdanam Brahma Uttara Anuhu Yajno Adhara Vishnu Hridayam Samvatsara Prajananam Ashvinam Purva Padam, it goes. That means it describes an animal, gives the name also later on, and gives the Purana names here. Dharma is at the head as per the Brahmanda Purana. Uttanapada is the upper jaw. And Dhruva, as you know, in the Purana is the son of Uttanapada. So Uttanapada was at the head and Dhruva was at the tail in the Puranas. Here instead of Uttanapada, we have Brahma which is coming there. That's all the difference. There are one or two other minor differences also at the end. And here also there are 14 stars mentioned. This is the Sayana Bhashya. Sayana Bhashya describes in very great detail of this. And this is actually a celestial figure. The mantra says, Yesha Divyaha Shakvaraha Shishumara. It is more about the Shishumara, the mantra, less about the Dhruva. But the Dhruva comes at the end. There is a mantra also here, Dhruvaha Tvamasi, Dhruvaha Kshitamasi. And this perhaps was related to the Shishumara more, but the concept of Dhruva, who is at the end as Shishukumara. At the end, that was the Abhaya is what he was called originally, is there. And this mantra has been extremely important to take it from a esoteric sense. Sayana describes this is the constellation which should be meditated upon in the night by the Brahmins. People who know this, who do this, in the evening will turn to the north and do the upasana. But of course, we may not look at the North Star. But originally, in the ancient period, this was the concept. They were supposed to think on the Dhruva and the Shishumara. Now, if you do some chronological analysis and the simple astronomical work, Alpha Draconis being the pole star, we know that because during the period 3200 to 2400. So Alpha Draconis was the Dhruva of the ancient Vedic period. And I have given the further details. I am not going to read these things. A conservative lower estimate for North Star having acquired the name Dhruva would be about 2800 BC, approximately. Now the Brahmanda Purana says it was rotating, and there are also, I will come to the other ancient texts, which say that Dhruva is moving. Not only the Purana, there are other texts which say that Dhruva is moving. So how was this possible? The answer is only in precision. So if you look into the precision of the equinoxes, then you will be able to understand this properly. But for religious purposes, Dhruva always identified to be the constellation of Shishumara till the 15th and even in the 16th centuries. Now we might have forgotten this today, we may be looking at some other Dhruva. But in the ancient times they were not taking it like that. Now just for the sake of fixing the ideas, this is a modern picture, this is our current Dhruva, Alpha in Ursa Minor. Whereas Tuban is here, this is the Drake constellation. And this is what the Krishna Yajurveda says, 2800 BC, this was the Dhruva. If you take a planetary picture of that, during that time...
Is Deneb also in this one?
Sorry?
Deneb?
Sorry?
Deneb also appears?
I think that.
Cygnus, Alpha Cygnus, Deneb?
Deneb?
Is it also appearing somewhere here?
No.
At some point it was...
No, it is not come. It is not come.
Okay.
It is not come. If you take a older picture of 2800 BC in a planetary software, this is how you get a picture. This is the Shishumara, which looks like an animal, a whale. Some of the later, very late Sanskrit literature calls this Goda Saratakriti. Goda is something like a lizard. It is also called a lizard in some of the literature. This is the Dhruva. Now, the precision I will not go into the details, all of you know that it takes 27,000 years for one full rotation. And as this happens, different stars come to the north celestial pole, and I don't know how well you can see this picture. The Vedic Dhruva is here. This is 4000 BC. This is roughly about 3000 BC. This is 2000 BC. This is 2000 AD. This is the current Dhruva. This is that circle which I am showing here. So this is Vishnu, Hridayam I showed you. So the star Vishnu would have been here. This is star Vishnu. That is called Gurumiyam also in the modern terminology, Psi Draco. And which are the texts which mention about Dhruva moving, that is the precision being recognized in the ancient literature, that is the Maitraniya Aranyaka. This again Aranyaka also called the Upanishad, and there the king Brihadrata asks several questions to the sage Shakyayana. It starts with a very sad statement. Everything is transient in this world, the ancient kings are not seen, what is the meaning of life? These are the usual kinds of things. And he gives, there are so many such things happening. Shikarinam Prapatanam, the hills are dropping down, which we believe as fixed, they are dropping down. Dhruva Prachalanam, even Dhruva is moving. I mean, there is a sadness, even Dhruva is moving. And Vatarajunam Nimajjanam. Vataraju is what I already said, because some of the celestials they were thinking when oriented with a tree or whatever at a particular place, they were not rising there. Because of precision, they become so glaring during this time. And when this could have happened, fortunately there is some signature in the same Upanishad, I will come to that. And in the Mahabharata, Dhruva Prajwalito Gauram Apasavyam Pravarti is a famous shloka, taken to be wrong by many of the later on people who have interpreted this, because Dhruva cannot be moving is their concept. Dhruva can move if you relate all of this together. And during Mahabharata period also perhaps this Dhruva had moved. That is again Alpha Draconis, not the present day Dhruva. Now the religious literature I was telling, this is Shankaracharya's Bhashya on Vishnu Sahasranama. We all recite Nakshatra Nemi, Nakshatri and all that. What is this Nakshatra Nemi? Nakshatra Nemi is Vishnu who controls all the nakshatras and makes it rotate is what he says. And Shankaracharya clearly says Nakshatra Tarakai Sartam Chandra Suryadayo Grahaha Vayu Pasha Mayer Bandai Nibadda Dhruva Sannike. He quotes, I don't know from where, this is not in a Purana I could locate, but he himself had that. And he describes it further. Jyotisham Chakram Brahmayantaha Taramayasya Shishumarasya Puchya Deshe Vyavastito Dhruvaha. It is at the tile he has to be of the Shishumara. And where does he take it? He refers to Taittiriya Aranyaka which I already quoted. He says a Vishnu Hridayam. This Vishnu, even though Dhruva is at the end, fine, but this is the Vishnu which is in the Hridaya of the Shishumara. That is the star which I already showed. This is the concept. The same explanation is given by Parashara Bhatta also in the Vishishta Vedic tradition for this statement. Now, Al-Biruni in the 11th century. So I am just showing it chronology wise. Al-Biruni in his India he describes, I don't know how well you can see it, he criticizes, he says Indians are so superstitious, the Hindu Brahmins, that they believe their Dhruva pole star is going to be not the fish, but it is a place which looks like a four-legged aquatic animal. They call it Shishumara, but he says, this is very, I suppose that the latter animal is the great lizard, for in Persia it is called so small. You can see the linguistic connection. So he also says it is the Draco. And he also says the pole itself is Vishnu, etc., etc. And he further makes fun how these people can be saved, because the Vishnu Purana is the Vishnu Dharma also says. The man reads this and knows accurately, God pardons to him the sins of the day, and 14 years will be added to his life. I showed you that in the Brahmanitra. They wanted this to be known accurately, and during the Sandhyavandaram to locate the Shishimara and pray on him. But of course, in some of the Puranas have some variations. I labored on this point to show that we have all this, and like my previous speaker talked about Pindri, a great Indologist who made mistakes and who wanted to pass judgment on the Indian culture and heritage. There are two Indologists who pass judgment on this, Whitney and then Keith. And Whitney says, it is, he talks about Thuban and this pole star, because Jacobi argued that Indians should have known Alpha Thuban as their Dhruva, because in the Vivaha Mantras it comes. But in the Vivaha Mantra they are referred also to the Grihya Sutras. So the Grihya Sutra literature belongs to 5th century BC or approximately like that. Then there was no pole star at that place. So his argument was they should have known it, the older one. But both Whitney and Keith left and right criticized. And Keith would say the pole star Dhruva appears in the Grihya Sutras only also here. And this person, he has written called a reference book on the Vedic words, and you search in that, he avoids Shishumara, he doesn't give Nectar and Keith, he doesn't give Dhruva also in that. How is it possible? And he also doesn't give the word Tithi, knowing that fully well Tithi was there, already in the Shatapatha Brahmana, he doesn't quote that. Now this is the kind of thing which has happened with some of the Western Indologists, and we should be conscious about it. So obviously the above prejudice and unwilling to concede, my conclusion is because it contradicts the Aryan invasion theory. I may be wrong as far as the Aryan invasion is concerned. Something happened? Doesn't want me to go further? Or it will? Yeah, so I have to say a few things about the Maitreya Aranita again, because I mentioned in the beginning that Brahadratha asked these questions about Dhruva moving. Can we date this? When was this happening? Fortunately, towards in the Maitreya Aranita itself, there is a discussion on Kala. You see that the astronomy that developed, the mathematics developed, has a long background, not only the numbers which were there, but about time. Because of the Dhruva moving, so they wanted to understand the long time. And there is a discussion on that. First, of course, everything happens due to Anna. Then, but Kalascha Annasya, the yoni for Anna, that is the reason, is Kala. But what does Kala? Surya Yonir by Kalasya. Kala happens due to Surya only. That is the movement of sun. Not as in the Rigveda, the moon, but here it is more the sun. And it continues the mantra further. And what is the form of that Kala? It is Nimesha, and then the Dwadashatmakam Vatsara, and then the two halves, the northern and the southern, the Agneya and the Varnartha. I will not again read that, but it says Sarpat Shravishtardantam Saumyam. So the winter solstice started in the half of the Shravishta Nakshatra, and we know that the beginning of the Shravishta, the Dhanishta, was a Vedanta Jyotisha period. So relative chronology you can easily get about 500 years between the two texts or the observations. I will not talk about the text also. And all this, why did they do? They want to do Kalam Brahmi Upasita. So you have to worship Kala as the Brahma. And if you do that, Kala Tasya Atiduram Apasarpati, then you will become independent of the Kala. So the mathematics started, and later on you will see in the music as a connection, a strong connection with Kala or the time of a special time actually. This was possible only during 600 to 1800 BC. So the Dhruva moving is correct. That is with the precision, whereas in 2800 it was fixed. Whereas around 1000 years later they were observed that it was moving. So there is nothing wrong in that. It is quite an observational tradition. Now, this again describes a solar zodiac. It's only two parts of the solar zodiac, not the 12-part, the Siddhantic astronomy periods that you are mentioning, the ecliptic and that kind of zodiac. But it's a two-part zodiac from the winter solstice to the summer solstice and the back. And this is connected with the Rutus or the seasons, but the seasons is a wrong word for the Rutu, at least in the ancient text. Because today we talk of seasons in a particular way, as though precisely a season starts. They did not understood how the season started, when on a precise day it started. It may rain, then you can't say that it is already a rainy season has started. It will start after 15 days, there may be no rains in a particular year. And you would see that this kind of variation or confusion is really an observational concept. It is there in the Vedas itself. Rutus are mentioned as 5, Rutus are mentioned as 6 in some of the texts, and even as 7 Rutus are mentioned. So even though it was known seasonal changes are due to sun, precise definition of the astronomical season was not possible in the Vedic period. Fourth seasons are very diffuse, and point of change cannot be accurately known beforehand. Iyengar, the first Prashna itself, talks about the 6 seasons, but only in terms of behavior of people. That the eyes become red, and something people are going to shout, and they are going to talk loudly, and so many things. So there are vague atmospheric conditions. And if, I have to say this because there is a lot of controversy going on, particularly among some circles, whether the solar zodiac was known to ancient Indians before the Siddhantic period or not. That has been the question. Now, Vriddhaganga, roughly about 5th century BC, let us say, I will come to this later. This is Vriddhaganga Samhita is still in manuscript form, I have a manuscript with me. He talks of, you can see here, Trayaha Ritavaha Ityaha Krishna Trayaha, only 3 Ritus he said, maybe the Chaturmasya kind of thing. Shat is the Bharga, Bharga said there are 6. Dwadasha is Narada, 12 Ritus is what Narada said. Chaturvimshati Ityaha Baburi, Baburi said there are 24. And you see the final thing, Trini Shatani Shashtani Ityaha Kroshtiki. 366 is what Kroshtiki said. And further it says, all these are learned people who worship the sun, and that is what they said. So there was difficulty in establishing the Ritus properly. And what they had previously was, here also I quoted, Nakshatranam, so okay, it is here, Taranam Dhruvaha. Who was the first star? Was the Dhruva was the first star, even according to this text. And Shad Rashi Tenam Adihi Shravishta. The Rashi started from the Shravishta, but there were only 6. Because you would see that later, it was Parashara who gave this description. Parashara for the first time states the season in terms of sun's position with the nakshatras. This text has been quoted in Utpala's commentary in various places. I will not go into the details. I collected all this and published as Parashara Tantra, released last year by Robert Narasimha and Subrayaka. This text contains almost all of observation before the Siddhantic period. And if you compare it with Vriddhaganga's thing, the manuscript, it becomes a whole of what was the kind of knowledge that was there in the pre-Christian era. I'll just show one way. The solar zodiac is described here. Again, skip this. He gives it in terms of nakshatras, 4.5 nakshatras per season is what he says. It is not 2 months per season or 2 rashis per season as in the later period. He doesn't use even the word Rashi. Even Vriddhagarga does not know the Mesha Vrishubha Rashis. And the nakshatras are given, I don't know how far you will be able to see it, starting with the Dhanishtadi. Dhanishtadi to the end of the Revati is going to be Shishira, etc. he gives. Now I have converted this into a 12 kind of table. The 6, because we know the nakshatras are 27, there is no ambiguity in the names of the nakshatras. And it starts from Dhanishta, which is going to be the winter solstice. So I can put a longitude on this 270 degrees. Why I am doing this exercise, I want to know whether roughly this matches with the chronology that we are telling. The 6 stars which have remained even to this day by their old names are the Kritikas, which can be identified, Rohini, which can be identified with Aldebaran, then Maga, which can be identified with Regulus, then Chitra with Spika, then Vishaka with the Alpha Libra, Jyeshta with the Antares. These are the bright stars which can be, the tradition is there, even to this day you can show them, observe them with the same star. With some other stars there is a little bit of doubt whether this was the old star, whether there was a new star. This again becomes important because in the Rigvedic period, perhaps it was unequal distances, the stars. They were the visible stars. But Parashara made them equal. There has to be 27 only, not 28, and they had to make equal distances. How did he create that? There is another story that we have to discuss it. But if I take these 6 visible stars, in the seasons that he is mentioning, that should have been a tradition, they were visible. Maybe it became too cold and then they said Shishira has started, they were able to see this particular star. So if I put the longitudes for these 6 stars, I have created them here, and you take a lower bound and upper bound, that all the 6 should have been visible. In the same time, I get 1350 to 1150, 1130 BC. So all the 6 stars were visible in the same season in this period only, not later. When we come to the later period, it will be a trouble. Similarly, the later zodiac, what we follow today as Ashwini, etc., you do this exercise, you get from 5th century BC to 6th century AD. So that zodiac should have started later on. But this zodiac, as I will show you, started with the winter solstice, not the equinox. And it is a solar zodiac, a 6-part solar zodiac, not a 12-month. So people normally would say that many of the Indologists say they knew only the lunar zodiac, they did not know the solar zodiac. That is not correct. Simply because they did not mark it from the equinoctial point, you can't say they did not know the solar zodiac. But the shift from the winter solstice to the equinox for the zodiac is another intriguing question. When it happened, why it happened, how it happened, that has to be seen later on. I don't have an answer for that. Now this Parashara, as he was mentioning about the inner planets, both the inner planets, Shukra and Buddha, he gives the visibility periods, not the periods. But he observed in terms of how many days it was visible, how many days it was invisible. The interesting point here is, it is a quotation from Brihad Samhita. And Brihad Samhita, Parashara view, Parashara Tantra as a book. He says that, and he also quotes the numbers of visibility as per Parashara. Dhanira himself has given. And the numbers are here. I will not go into the details. But Utpala's commentary you can see, Yadyapi Gadita Vasanana Yadana Utpadyate Tatapi Parasharam Angikritya Acharyana Uttam. So he is a little bit hesitant. Says, as per mathematics, this is all wrong, but simply because Parashara has said, Varahmihira has given. But actually Utpala was wrong. These things, as he says, is a different part he was using. Parashara says there are 7 paths for Buddha. And the 7 paths were the 7 visibility periods, either in the morning or in the evening in a particular year. This is simply a planetary software model. So if you see there are 7 visibility periods, and roughly you can calculate, I have done that exercise also, put in my book. They are correct. This 40 for 33, 22 days of invisibility is correct. Even for Venus he gives, I will not go into the details, what he has given is correct. But the most intriguing thing is about the star Agastya. Agastya is Canopus. All the Siddhantic books later on which I have seen to the extent possible, they discuss Agastya. Why were they worried about Agastya? Now, Varahmihira says in this period in Ujjain, it was a 143 degrees longitude, he mentions that also. He gives the Rashi weakness. Here is again a picture of 530 AD in Ujjayi. Canopus would be rising here, and the Rashi which was rising would be roughly the Simha Rashi. That is, the Regulus was rising, this is the Magha Nakshatra. You have to see when you consider the ancient text in terms of the nakshatras and not in terms of the Rashis. Now, in the commentary referring to this statement of Varahamila, he says, old people say, Drishyate Sakila Haste Gate Arke Rohini Upagate Astamukai. He says, the ancient people say, Agastya rises when sun is in Hasta Nakshatra and he sets when sun is in Rohini. And Utpala comments, this is all wrong because of Parashara, Acharya has said this. He quotes, fortunately for us, Parashara. Hastaste Savita Viveki, Rohini Samste Pravishati is what Utpala's comment is. And Varahamila derives this planet lower because Parashara also says so many other things. It's a very important question which for history of science people is important. The student of Parashara asks, is Agastya a planet or is it a star? Because I see that some months he rises, some months he sets. And instead of rising in the east and moving like the planets, I see that he is in the south. Please explain what is Agastya. Then of course Parashara gives a long one. I quoted all this in my book. But finally, Utpala says this is all wrong. It is a Utpata, he says. Whatever Parashara has said is Utpata. Utpata is a big anomaly. The very unfortunate thing which has happened is what he says. But that is wrong. For 1400 BC, Parashara was exactly correct. This is again, I have given also the later details of the rise and set of Agastya, because Agastya is a very important star. Agastya was not visible in Rome nor mentioned in Greek astronomy. Egyptians knew. Babylonians mentioned one place which is doubtful. Whether it is Agastya or Guru, we don't know. But doesn't matter. They might have known. But 37 degrees, north of 37 degrees parallel, we don't see Agastya at all. So the legend of Agastya is Indian movement. So whatever is connected with Agastya is important for us. So you would see that in 1400 BC, when the sun was still about to rise, Canopus was here in south. In the east it was Hasta which was rising, Hasta Nakshatra. Similarly, the set in the western sky when the sun is setting, Rohini is here and there is going to be last visibility of Agastya. So it was correct. So Parashara was correct actually. Now, where is mathematics coming in here? Now this comes from the Vruddhagarga's Samhita. Vruddhagarga follows Parashara to a large extent, and I will just quote because of the shortage of time. I will take 100 I have to cover music also. That he wanted something on music. So you see, this is again from the Vruddhagarga Samhita. Nahi sarvatra ganitam, nahi sarvatra darshanam. Darshanam Ganitam Chaiva Yugavad Yoga Sadhanam. Very clear, all of you can understand. You have to combine both observation and Ganita, then only you get the yoga. This comes in the Chandramana Adhyaya in Vruddhagarga Samhita, where you must know the conjunction of moon with the stars. So maybe they knew that some of these you need not directly observe or they were not observable, but they intelligently relate by extrapolation also. Then you can use Ganita, but not in all places he got it. So Vedanta Jyotisha as movement is algorithmic. So they have combined this and mathematics started, this kind of mathematics, by observation. Now, this is what I call the Mundane mathematics of the observational tradition. Now, there is one more tradition I will quickly cover. Vedas were transmitted by hearing, that is Shruti. This is preserved with the help of special linguistic artifices, methods and modulation. We all know that. This inspired a parallel but rather slow development of esoteric mathematics of the hearing tradition, culminating in the classical raga music. Now, how this happened? Very fast and quick. It is not a complete work yet, but I am still working on it. I am giving an example from the book by N.S. Ramchandran. Some of you might have seen Ragas of Carnatic Music. He was the first person in 1938 trying to measure the frequencies in music halls and other places. Way back, he had only a frequency meter. You read his book, it's available in use. Now, I am showing this. He wanted to know the swaras of the Vedas. But first of the Rigveda, Agrimeda, Puravaikam, how it is done. Which are the swaras? Ni, Sa, Ri. Like this, there are only 3 swaras which were used in the Rigveda. And in the Samaveda, he comments there are three styles which he knew: the Tanjavur style, and what Sayana has said, and what a book called Narada Shiksha says. But we are interested in the singing style, that is the Tanjavur style, which comes as the A style. Starts with, this is the mantra is Agnaya Hivitye Granano Avyadaya. It starts with Ni, Da, Sa, like that. All the 7 swaras are used, and later it describes this is what is generally called the Karahara Priya scale. Now, I was curious, what is this Karahara Priya scale? No music, many of us know, I'm sure, classical music. We have understand the swaras, and we know the shrutis, and we listen to music and we appreciate also. But there is a tremendous mathematical theory behind it. And that is very briefly I want to say, because this is a hearing tradition, and the variation, they should have only listened. This I want to especially say, because counting, as I said at the starting of mathematics, the Tarkika said you can count in 2 ways. The Sankhya's can be understood in 2 ways. You can run, please correct me. One is you see and do it. Second is, even if a blind man, he can touch and do that. Touch also can count. But it's a third one that we did not mention, that he can hear and count. The music and the Samaveda and the scales are all, they heard the numbers and did that. That is the thrust of what I want to say. Here, way back as early as Bharata, we have the Natya Shastra, roughly about 200 BC to 200 AD. The details are there. The important things are the 7 notes of the swaras. This actually in the book Pratishakya there is a reference to the 7 swaras. Not exactly in this manner, but approximate manner. And we know that the 7 swaras, whatever may be the scale, was used in the Samagana, Sama chanting also. Now, music performances consisting of some swaras being more and some being less. This is a relative frequency concept was there. This is the new mathematics that I want to stress upon. And a Dviguni Bhava. There are 2 words which he uses, Alpatva Bahulatva and the Dviguni Bhava. See, Alpatva Bahulatva is here. I have no time to go into the details. What is this Dviguni Bhava? I will come to that in a minute. It's very interesting. Now, just to put things in a particular order for those who may not know, the swaras, the 7 swaras are Sa, Re, Ga, Ma, Pa, Ga, Ni. Pa is called the Panchama. Panchama because from Sa it is the 5th. It is always called Panchama because it is the 5th. They counted. There is a number was given, but they heard and counted because that was a fixed ratio. And you would see, if the Shadja, the Sa is some frequency, say 200, I simply put it as 1. The higher Sa, the Shadja is going to be 2, or it will be 400 Hz. Now, this is the relative kind of thing. In our music, we did not have Sa at a fixed value at all, the others to the presently. But in the olden days, they might not have had like that. They had a lot of struggle to fix up this. That is the mathematics which is described in Brajadeshi, in Kohala, and also in the Sangeeta Ratnakara. And later, from this, at least in the Carnatic music, after 16th, 17th century, this became very fixed. That you have to have an Adhara Shruti and then the ratio. And all these ratios, they have only heard. At least the first 7 ratios they heard, there was no way of measuring them. The ratios I have given here. I am putting the ratio for a specific purpose. They also developed a meta language. Without that meta language, this would not have been possible. They gave the name Shadja, Rishabha, Gandhara and all that. How do you sing? You can't sing Shadja, Rishabha, Gandhara. You would say Sa, Re, Ga, Ma, it is easy. So that conversion of the concept, the linguistic words, whatever they may have occurred, into smaller symbols, like Panini reduced the language, that symbolic language was the start of this classical music, and that was done right from Bharata's time, but Bharata is not so explicit, but Matanga is very explicit, of Raga music. That is of the 8th and 9th century. And the number of swaras, or what they call shrutis, there is a lot of discussion whether there should be 22, whether there should be 13, or whether there should be 7. And in fact, he goes on to say in the commentary of the Sangeeta Ratnakara, they say there are 3 different octaves, and the same things repeatedly says, the same swaras repeat. But some people say there are 23 shrutis, some people say there are 66, because they did not want the 3 octaves to be separated, because the Dviguni Bhava was a very tough thing. They have to understand when it becomes double, the same swara is heard and same thing is repeated. Kalinatha's commentary, this periodic repetition of the 7 swaras is very well discussed. But some people perhaps did not agree and they said you have to have all the 6 to see. And some people said Anantyam, there are infinite number of swaras you have to accept. And this is again important because in the classical music it is not discrete, it is actually a continuous presentation of the swaras. I will quit this. And why I have to consider this spectrum? This is the spectrum of Sa and Shadja. And this is of a particular lady who sang this, and the spectrum is available. You would see that in this 180 Hz, the first peak, the higher harmonics are at multiples of that, 360, etc. Similarly, Pa is 271, 3 by 2 of this, and they repeat at double that. Now, this is not what we hear in the music. This is not the spectrum of music itself. If only these are presented, there is no music. So, the time series of this is not what we are hearing. If you take any of this the phase plane, I mean as a vibration mark, kindly excuse me, I have to look into in a particular way, it would look a multiplicate structure like this. I give you the impression here. But if the swaras, as that Anantya says, these ratios were not, they might have become incommensurate. That means they may be irrational. Why 5 by 4 when you sing it may not exactly like it? What happens? It becomes something like this. This is the basic unit out of which classical music is made up. So the Raga Alapana is such an enchanting thing. How the Alapana comes up, this is what I have been curious about. And at least in Carnatic music, there is a graded development. You have the Sarigama Padanisa, then you have Sasagiri Gaga Mama, like that. And then we have the great Purandara Dasa who started with the Gita. The actual singing started with Purandara Dasa's time. And these notes are arranged in a particular way. And Sharmadeva, you can see, he quotes Bharata and others and he gives a definition. Yesterday we were talking about definition of time, music. Raga is a succession of pleasing sounds in time. It doesn't say time, but it has to be in time because it brings it. It is a product of creative imagination, etc., etc. And he gives so many other, 10 other things. One of the things is Alpatva Bahulatva, which is easily missed. And this Alpatva Bahulatva is discussed in great detail. And what I want to present to you is, Raga is a Swara time series, evolving in the space of Aroha, Avaroha, the property of Alpatva Bahulatva. This is my definition. The scale is, in modern mathematics, is a sample space of the probability theory. Alpatva Bahulatva literally means some swaras more or less. This is the old-fashioned statement about relative frequency. I will show you evidence of this, leading eventually to the concept of probability distribution. So classical music, as it developed random time series. It's a random process. It's a development of presentation of random process is classical music according to me. This is the scale which I have shown here, which for mechanics people would indicate a kind of a periodic function which, this is nothing but Sarigama Padanisa, is not linear because the ratios are not at equal intervals. So it has to be curved. The Avaroha is like this. If it is a Vakra Raga, it has to be like this. And this is the attractor to which that particular raga should lie within. So that is a strange attractor. Now the lower classical constructions, they are going to be periodic within that. They are not going to be strange attractors. But the final alapa is a strange attractor still lying within that. That means it is a chaotic system finally which is coming. Why I say this? Sharmadeva is very particular. He gives sample time series. This is the alapa of a particular raga, which raga we need not go. He gives pages and pages of this. Today, if I have to simulate a rainfall time series or an earthquake time series, what I do, I generate artificial time series, give the samples one below the other, call it an ensemble for my students to show how the variations are there. He also wanted to do the same thing. So he gives, this is the kind of thing, he had developed the meta language and then gives the samples. Now, his commentator, Kalinatha, was more particular that he wanted to make it easier. He gives the relative frequency interpretation. There is one particular thing he takes in several places. Let me read this. Atra Swara Sankhya Alpatva Bhagatva Parijnanaya Likhyate. I am going to write for the knowledge of the students. Shadjaha Shatrimshat Rishabha Dvadasha. How many should come? He also gives a sample size. Nilita Dvadashottaram Chata. So the n sample size is also given. So they knew about the statistics of the ragas, or at least they wanted some statistics to be given. And if you permit me, I will just run this. Can you run this with the help of this or not? It's not possible. Or you wait for the next one, doesn't matter. So what I have shown here is actually a particular singing of the easiest of the Gita, that is the Lambodar Lakmika. And it comes Sri Gananatha Sindhuravarna. That is the first Gita taught to all people in the Carnatic music, and there is already a full music. You can play it with your side instruments and all that. That boy is singing actually. Now if I convert the swaras, this is not the singing, this is the swaras which are made as a time series, because I remember the definition of Sharvadeva. It is the swara succession in time which has to be there. That means it is the ratios. So I have taken the ratios of the swaras of the Raga Navahari. This is how the time series looks like. It is the first of the Carnatic music. And you take the autocorrelation, this is a AR1 process, this is autoregressive, first order autoregressive process. Already it is a complex random process, the first Gita itself. And if you listen to that, anybody will recognize that it is the easiest of the music. You want something more complicated. So this is not sung in the kacheris or the performances at all. This is only for training, like the elementary first standard lesson. He also gives one more called Carrionian and Carrionian. That also you convert, that also becomes a first order autoregressive process. Now you can easily guess what I am trying to say. If you make it more and more complex, you are going to get more and more complex correlation structures, eventually leading to something maybe chaotic or self-similar structures. Just try these on two of the things. One is called as Svarajate, which is more complex than the Gita. The Hamsa Guna, which is the simple sample space, only Sari, Dapa, Nisa, and this is available easily. So you construct, you can even have a probability density function constructed, which I have not done. This is the, this is the time series of the Swarajate, the Hamsa Guna Swarajate. That's how it starts. And you can see how complex it looks like. And its correlation structure, you can see it suddenly falls down. There is no correlation at one lab at all. At 2 it picks up, and afterwards it's all very small and becomes the huge one. But there is a periodicity in the structure if you look at the spectrum. Now you go to the more complex one, the Varnam. Varnams are considered very standard and complex. But this Raga is Hamsadhvani, only a 5 Swara scale is the simplest among the things. It already has such a complex correlation structure, which is not exponentially dropping down as an ARM process, but dropping down here, then linearly or nearly linear, slowly increasing. If I go to the further things, which I have not done, the Kritis, like the Vatapinam or the Alapin, they should be more complex and the correlation will die down very slowly, having maybe a power law variation. That would lead to the chaotic structures. So this is where the innovation and the sensitivity and initial condition comes. Each person sings this, the music, the alapana particularly, in his own way, but still you will recognize it is the same raga. It is the same raga that presented by the other person also, because it is within the same strings of raga. Now I come to the, why I say this is mathematics. There are several definitions of mathematics. One is, of course, I already said the applied mathematics of the astronomy, as it developed from the Vedic practices. I will skip all of this. I will come to the last definition of Hardy in 1940. A mathematician, like a painter or a poet, is a maker of patterns. If his patterns are more permanent than theirs, it is because they are made with ideas. Now, this music is made with ideas. Because the whole of Samadhana, you can't go into the philosophical details, it comes at the Pashyanti level of the ideation structures. And because it is made with so much of ideas, this right hand side, the hearing tradition, and the Triguni Bhava, that is actually the frequency doubling. In modern terminology, it is frequency doubling. They did not know the frequency structure. If you read this text, they struggle to explain that multiplication by 2. He says, the Tarastayi you have to produce by the head. It is called Dviguna because you have to put double the effort. But what he means is, he clearly says the lower Shadja and the higher Shadja are same swaras. Don't mistake between the two. You you get repetitively higher swaras also at the same rate as this. Lot of experimentation is presented in the text with the Venas, the two Venas and all that. I think Anurag and others are working on that. And hence, this mathematics developed out of hearing and experimentation. This mathematics developed out of observation of the sky, and then again some kind of experimentation, some kind of modeling of the Nehru and other things, working with that. So, both the mathematics and the related work is available even in the Puranas to some extent as stories and legends. There is astronomy, music and dance even in the Puranas. Music and dance, what I mentioned just now, available even in some of the Puranas. Thank you very much. Sorry, I took some. There are any questions that we are happy to.
So we keep it brief, then we'll go for tea. So, questions?
So since you mentioned about, yeah.
Solar zodiac is
Yeah.
not quite clear.
Yeah.
It's known, not known at all.
Sorry.
You are mentioning about solar zodiac, I do not know. It was known, not known. So not clear.
No, what I meant was, there are references, there are people who have written that the Indians did not know the solar zodiac till the Greek influence came. Till the Greek influence came and the Rashis came into India. That is, the Mesha Vrishabha things came up. Now, that type of solar zodiac might not have known. There are, once again, another thing. By zodiac, if you see the literal meaning in the Greek literature, it is the animal figures. But we use it today not in terms of the animal figures, but simply the ecliptics. So the animal figures were also known, not necessarily along the ecliptic, but for the constellations. That is Shishumara, Riksha and those things which I said. Second is, solar zodiac was also known as the path of sun if we take it. It was known, not from equinox to equinox, but winter solstice to winter solstice. The background being not the Rashis, but the 4.5 nakshatras. I'm sorry, the 4.5 nakshatras. That is what I meant. So the solar zodiac was known. But in the Rudrana it is not that. If you see, it is mostly lunar kind of thing. Even though the Adimansa was known, intercalation was known, but this kind of picture comes mainly from the Maitrayana equation. First 2, then multiplied by 3, you get 6. So that is how perhaps it has come.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
So, about the precision, they had some idea, some 27,000 years along.
It is mentioned there in some of the Puranas, the ones Gudame spent 6,000 years, and I'm sure the astronomers, Siddhantic astronomers had an idea. Yeah, they had the 26,500 or something.
Slightly larger value.
Yeah, it was there.
But anyway, it is very.
It was there. But not in the Puranas and the Vedic texts that I mentioned. So you have to discriminate them. No, he hasn't given any reference to that. I have seen, corresponded with him also. He says that in Vruddhagarga, actually Vruddhagarga Samhita, what it is, nobody yet knows because it is not public. I have collected some of the manuscripts, we are working on it. Vruddhagarga in only one place says, if the winter solstice doesn't happen at the end of Shravana, then there is going to be some calamity is going to happen. That means it was happening at some point, it is not happening there, so the precision should have taken it. Actually, that statement is to Parashara. Parashara, maybe Parashara student. So it is very difficult to say, identify this with persons. I would say this, I can identify with the school, with that school and the people. So precision was definitely known. Why Vruddhagarga, as I showed you that Brihadratha and Shakya knew during the Maitrayana period, they knew that. Not the reason for that. This is some
full value, not exact value.
No, you see, this is again a trouble when we discuss this in comparison with the Greek literature, like you were mentioning something. There is only Hipparchus who knew this, there was no other mention of precision was not known before. It is very difficult to say. See, the phenomenon would be known, the reason might not be known exactly. I'm sure you, Hipparchus did not know it is the earth which rotates, not the sun. But it doesn't make any difference to that. So, these people did not know the reason for the eclipses as we know it today, but they knew the period. They have observed the eclipses. So what is wrong with that? So the new precision that is failed. Well, the importance of this is historical. Well, you know this.
No, one small question. So when you talk about precision, from what you have studied, will you be able to say, so by 3800 to 2400, something like that was here, and then there is some other mention which says that it has moved from this point to this point. So will you be able to correlate and then say that this is the way it has moved from point to point?
Once. You can. You want the celestial pole position, that can be done, or you want the equinox being shifted, or any point. You can easily evaluate. You can go.
Figures are straightforward.
Yeah, you can be going. Yes, yes, you can be done. Sure.
So because why I am asking is there is a problem because they talk of both repetition and
Yeah.
so if this precision were to be known, then why talk of repetition?
That I no. The reason, as you are talking Surya Siddhanta and all that, they might have taken that from some other tradition. That tradition has to be connected and related. I have not looked into it in greater detail, but this relation is possible. But it may be of interest for later astronomy also, because they also use the word Dhruvaka. But from where the word Dhruvaka has come, linguistically it should have come only from the Vedic period, where the pole was near Dhruvan. So some of the numbers which are mentioned in the ancient astronomical text, notwithstanding what Buddha says of the Surya Siddhantic longitudes and stuff, it may have referred to the original Dhruva, not to the later Dhruva. This is something which has to be investigated. I may be wrong, but this has to be investigated. And some numbers may correlate with that, rather than with the later period with which they are correlated.
Okay, so further discussion.
Thank you.